Welcome to the Echo Essentials podcast. My name is Chris Pekarsky, and on today's episode, we're talking about education, we're talking about democracy, and we're talking with Jay Aspin and Bill Steer in from the community, who you've known from a lot of different places, Bill being Backroads Bill here with Echo, and Jay being a longtime member of local representation in the community, being a former MP of the area. They were both part of the North District School Board Board of Trustees, recently being the chair and the vice chair, but they're in here today to talk a bit about their new petition, a coalition as they call it, called the Citizens Advocating for Democracy in Ontario, which is really interesting. It's a part of this is a second part or third part, I don't even know at this point, regarding the saga or the story regarding Near North and the trustees and being removed and what that looks like at the Ministry of Education level in Ontario in regards to Paul Calandra, who's the Minister of Education, and Doug Ford and all of that stuff. It's a really cool conversation. We really kind of focus on the removal of rights and what that means for democracy with the trustee system and in general. We outline how there was 185 years, which we talked about before in a prior episode, and what that is at risk of losing as we enter a very pivotal year of 2026 regarding education, elections and stuff. It's really interesting. Give it a full listen as always. Thank the lads for coming in again today. But before we get to all of that, I do want to throw it and thank our title sponsor of today's show, Source for Sports.
It's almost that time of year. Early mornings at the rink, fresh notebooks and backpacks, and a community gearing up for another great season of varsity sports. At Source for Sports North Bay, we're proud to be part of it all. Whether it's finding your kid's first pair of skates, gearing up for tryouts, or outfitting your team for the season ahead, we've got you covered. Because here, we're not just a sports store, we're neighbors, coaches, teammates, and fans. And we're proud to cheer you on every shift, step, and stride of the way. Visit Source for Sports North Bay at 1321 Fisher Street and let us help you along your way.
On today's episode, we have in from our community from a couple different factions. Some may be familiar in face. We have Jay Aspin and Bill Steer. Gentlemen, welcome in.
Glad to be here.
Nice to be here.
Yes. So for many of our Echo listeners and watchers, you may know Bill from Backroads Bill, but he's here on a bit of a different business, and he's accompanied with Jay Aspin, our former MP once upon a time. But we're in here today to talk a bit about democracy and the trustee system, which obviously you've both been involved with a little bit lately. Can you give some context as opposed to, for our listeners, you were recently trustees, dismissed trustees. Is that the official title now?
Yeah, well, this is something we continually correct with the media.
Feel free.
We are still trustees. Yes. We are still elected trustees. In fact, I still remain the Northern Chair of the Northern Region for the Ontario Public School Board Association. Mm-hmm. Jay remains chair, although we're under supervision. We still are elected officials until such time as we're told.
Right, and that's great trimmings because we brought you in for a big conversation about this. We spoke to your colleague back in, I want to say December, Miss Sargent, talk a bit about the fallout of it all. But we're here to talk a bit about this new petition you have going on and the letter you wrote. So can we maybe get in some context about the petition and maybe the letter?
Yeah, well, essentially, I can speak maybe to the letter. Bill can handle the petition because it's Bill's initiative.
Perfect.
The letter, I guess, this came down rather quickly. Mm-hmm. December 1, the guillotine fell, and I mean it was the guillotine. We were led to believe, at least I was led to believe, and I kept the board up to snuff that that the ministry was cooperating with us and that we would do our best to honor these directives they sent, and I was working hand in hand with the office. Came down rather diligently on December 1. Reason for that, of course, we've since learned it's politics. The minister was facing the heat in the House, and he had to have a good reason to back his Bill 33, and we became the fodder. And that's all politics. That happens. The board had a bad term, if you will. It was predictable. 5 of the trustees in my opinion, and I wasn't elected last term, so I wasn't on the board until the last 2 months. In my opinion, five of the trustees didn't know about governance and didn't want to know. So it kind of went from bad to worse. Our contention is not what happened to the board, although we didn't like the way the minister did it.
Right.
Our main contention is the minister has gone on, Paul Calandra has gone on to say that he's musing about getting rid of trustees.
Right.
And, I've been a trustee. I was first elected back in 76, which is almost 50 years ago.
Yeah.
22 years on the board, 18 years on council, and 1 term as MP. Very staunch democratic opinion. And trustees are really the barometer of what happens in education. They're the voice of the people. So we're very much against that, so much so that Bill has created a petition to back our views, and we need support. We need support from the public, and Bill, maybe you can elaborate on that petition.
Yeah, I'd love to. And for the viewers and listeners, you just Google Save Trustees as Elected Officials in Ontario. That's a bit of a mouthful, but not very long. Save Trustees as Elected Officials in Ontario. And our tagline is, democracy is under attack and we don't want to be trumped in Ontario. And Jay well knows, in fact, it came from the statistic, trustees have been around, I think it's 1846, pre-Confederation.
185 years.
That's correct.
So, yeah. And so... and Jay just mentioned, we are the voice of the people of public education. We are elected, and the looking forward, I mean, most candidates will, if we survive, have to declare thereabouts in May and June, and the election will be on October the 26th. So something has to happen pretty soon. The minister has, in many countless interviews, was going to say something about the future of trustees before Christmas. Then he said he had to report back to cabinet. Mm-hmm. Then he said he would do it early in the new year. And when this is published and goes to air, it's almost February. And so, and the legislature will sit circa the middle of March.
March 27th.
Yeah. And so something has to happen. And we're just seeing, I think, the beginnings. This petition is one thing. There are other petitions out there, but we're just seeing the underpinnings of, I think, a concentrated effort to push back, because democracy is under attack. And I mean, when you step back from it, how can you remove an institution that's been around for a long time? Whether you think at all trustees, what they do, because most time, and this is what I often talk about, when someone says the Board of Education, I often almost interrupt them and say, are you talking about the operational side, or are you talking about the Board of Trustees? And of course, both are intertwined, but both act separately under the Education Act because of their roles and responsibilities. Mm-hmm. Most people, as Jay would say, they don't know what trustees do, but we do have well-defined rules and responsibilities under the Education Act.
True. I think, when we had Louise on to talk a bit about this, it was, for those who haven't listened, go listen to it. It was a great episode. But it's a nice little precursor to this one. Listen to this one first, then go back. Obviously, don't interrupt it. But yeah, I think it's weird. I think, when we talked about it before, it feels like if you were to only poll the comment sections of any article, which is not maybe like the best sample size, I would assume a lot of the general public probably don't know what trustees in the education system do on a day-to-day or a larger scale basis, right? And obviously, you can look up certain things and involvement. You can go to meetings, to certain meetings. You can read minutes, but I think they just don't truly fully understand the scope of it, right? And I think, with this new start, and, we outlined earlier off the show and in previous shows that Near North was the 6th school board that was kind of taken under control from the Ontario government. 5 of the other ones being, much larger ones, often for, financial reasons. This one's more governance. It feels like, the decision was made to be an example, and maybe we're going to see things going forward because Paul has outlined, as we kind of allude to it being an attack on democracy at the provincial level and maybe larger, that he's looking at maybe scaling back trustee system across the board. By the board, I mean, Ontario, of course, no pun intended. It's interesting because he hasn't really amused the idea about it being all 4 boards. He's really kind of targeting the English public board, right?
That's right. He says for constitutional reasons, he's not going to consider eliminating the Catholic and the Francophone trustees, which is a bit of a discrimination.
What does that mean then?
Well, it means they're an exception because of constitutional considerations.
History.
Trustees have to be there to guide the religion and guide the language, To your point, though, Chris, about people not knowing what trustees do. Trustees are the barometer of the system. They're the voice of the people.
Yeah, temperature check.
What Calandria is attempting to do, in my opinion, he set aside these student and family offices, okay? That's the alternative. And you mentioned, I wrote to the Premier. I wrote a 3-pager to the Premier around Christmas, his Christmas letter, and I indicated to him that these family and student offices just won't cut it. What they're going to be they're essentially going to be another step, another bureaucratic step. And essentially, they won't be part of the system. They'll be reviewing cases and reviewing situations, and they'll garner all information, but they won't have the power of trustees to do anything. So essentially, you're getting a bureaucratic list of complaints, which will be totally ineffective. I don't think the public are aware of the negative consequences of this. And that's what Bill and I mean by democracy. Democracy, your voice is cut right out of the system.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, in cases now, people are filling out online forms to try to get to the supervisor. Just today, the Coalition for Autism in Ontario, they're trying to gather examples now because they can't get to the supervisor with individual complaints. Whereas with trustees, you call up your trustee, the trustee will direct you to the source. Again, we're not on the operational side, and this is sometimes where trustees go over a line. We don't change curricula. That's not our job. And we don't say that there should be phonics in grade 2. And of course, there's a whole process. So it starts with the teacher, then the principal, superintendent, and then necessary it goes up the chain. So yes, without trustees, as Jay has said, society is truly losing their voice.
And trustees have the relationship with the system.
Right.
They know where to go, who to talk to, and, they do it on a cooperative basis. The system will really go south. In my letter to the Premier, I mentioned the fact that Nova Scotia threw out their trustees in 2017.
Really?
And they are very sorry for it. They're trying to get the trustees back. Other provinces like Alberta and British Columbia have worked within the system. They've given trustees more education, if you will, more linkages to the system. They've worked within the system, which I think is the right answer. Part of the problem is not trustees. Part of the problem is and the government's responsible for this. There are oversight people in each particular region has a regional director, if you will, okay?
Yeah.
This position, and I know this from being on the board 22 years, this position has been totally ineffective. In the board, in the Near North board, when they got offside on a few things, that director should have stepped right in, advised the bureaucrats in Toronto, we got a problem here and we've got to solve it. Instead, it was lingered until it got uncontrolled.
Yeah, there was a lot of dots to connect there, but there was that latent effect, and of course, one thing leads to another, and all mirrored in the lack of good governance. And this is what Jay started out by saying, and that was I think that was the climate we're in the former term, and then come the reorg.
But the point is to work within the system.
Right.
Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
And don't, as I pointed out, don't blame everything. There are a lot of ills in the education system these days, a lot of things that have to be corrected. Violence, special education, funding of education, class size. Don't blame all those things on trustees. You're simply... it's a shortcut to blaming the ills of the system on the backs of trustees.
Yeah, the minister says, he's going to save a lot of money perhaps by getting rid of trustees like that we're not capable of running the $4 billion. I want people to know that my stipend per month is $370. We certainly don't do it for... If people think, this is another job or extra cash, well, it just isn't so. But further to Jay's point, in other jurisdictions like Alberta and BC, Jay, they've enhanced that and tried to get, how can I say, better candidates to become trustees.
How?
I'm not sure. Jay's been doing the research on that.
Well, basically, it's better candidates and people who want to have really. Got a feeling for the system, that want to be there because of the kids. And that's the way it used to be. It got away from that somewhat over the years. I was a trustee first in 1976, and that's quite a while ago. And, it's almost 50 years ago, and you had people of the community that felt for education, felt it was an important part of education. And there's a whole combination of things that can be done to make the job more efficient and more effective, and that should be part of the process.
Yeah, and we don't belong to a trustees association. The Ontario Public School Board Association is made up of member boards.
Yeah.
So there are obviously training for trustees, et cetera, and we meet. But Jay has well told me. Ontario has 5 regions, the northern region. Back in the day, it was the Northern Ontario School Boards Association. I think that's the correct term, where the North had a voice because it was consolidated. But this is the problem. Our association has to walk the tightrope to try to. I always say we have to try to push back, and this is the climate we're in now. We all want to know what's going to happen because you can't put up lawn signs and say oppose Bill 45. We could have said that with Bill 98 or Bill 33, but we don't know what we're facing.
Right.
To put it in perspective, Chris, you've got 72 public boards in Ontario. Most of those boards are doing terrific work. Terrific students, terrific work, terrific trustees, terrific boards. Okay? 6 have gone awry. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, as I've said before. You correct the 6 boards naturally, and you firm up the system so the system is effective and efficient and responsible, and that should be the solution.
Yeah, we were well on our way, as Jay said, about correcting the directives.
Yeah, I think we said this too.
And so, my question is always like, when do you come off double secret probation? When do you come off being supervised? Like we don't know. And of course, trustees in general don't know if they're going to be able to run again this coming October 26th.
I realize I'm going to make a false comparison, but allow me to humor you both. It feels like in an odd twist of irony that you were kind of slated to a pass or a fail, but yeah, you couldn't get a proper grade. Like it was either yes or no, when there were so many different things that you could have done along the way that could have kept things going or different, but in the eyes of the grader, it was yes or no.
Well, I've been in politics a long time, Chris, and I guess I'm a little more cynical than that. I think the minister made up his mind.
I also think that too.
And, he was pressured in the House, and he needed fodder. And, we became the fodder. Now, I don't, that's politics. That's what happens. But our contention is we're looking at the broader picture. We're saying trustees are a very valuable part of the education system, have been for 185 years, and you can make the system more effective, a la Alberta, and British Columbia.
Right. And I'm keen because it's going to be, I don't know, I agree with you too, by the way. I'm just, trying to be literary. I think the order was made before it ever got to your door. I think it was pretty clear. It felt like he kind of had it out for Near North, when it was all kind of evolving the way it did. But how do you think, if we were to put the genie back in the bottle and let's say we can go back in time or, rechange things in the future, how can we, speaking loosely, get some ideas going, how can we refresh or reinvigorate, life into the idea of trustees being back in the system? Because obviously we want to have, that sense of democracy back, but how can we kind of modernize it in a way that fits Ontario, kind of like they did on the East Coast or in BC and Alberta?
Well, I think that's basically up to the government. I think if they want a good, governance structure, they have to take some ownership and they have to provide some training and some good guidelines so that people and also honorarium. As Bill pointed out, trustees make peanuts.
Nothing.
Basically, you're a trustee because you care for the education, you care for kids' future. That's what it's all about. Okay, but in today's world, it's a two-income world, and both parents have to work. So if you do provide, if you're lucky enough to provide some hours to help the system, you need to be compensated for it.
I agree.
And I think that's a good start. I think that and training and OPSBA, the association that Bill's a director of, they've done some marvelous things in the last few years, improving training, improving the role, and that should be continued. And that's what's happening in the prairie provinces.
So I continue to be a voting delegate for the Near North Board, and it's on the books. I brought it forward, and it was passed through the Near North Board. It's a Near North District School Board motion, and it'll come up at the AGM in June. That our thinking was way back. You said back then, and looking forward. The resolution said to study for efficiencies. Now, some people think, as soon as you say efficiencies, that means cuts.
Yeah.
That's not the case. But we need to study the four board model. It's not saying we're going to get rid of them. So the resolution didn't say that. We haven't had a major study for quite some time. And we had a huge study in Bill Davis's time, Living and Learning. There was another one since then, but we haven't had one for quite some time because education society changed. Education, the way it's delivered, is changed. Now the minister has talked about he's going to review the assessment, the UQAFO, and so. But that's another thing. But I mean, we need to. So before another guillotine comes down, it would be good to study education and see and bring it all together and dissect it again.
Now, just to channel Jay's, he said skepticism earlier. I have lack of faith in anything that we can get done starting today and up until October to kind of make sure that study happens. Because I feel like in order to do any kind of, extensive study in education, you need a full academic year. We just don't have that anymore, let alone any time. But I think that if there's anything that we can, choose to study to examine how we can, improve and benefit, looking at the system at large and how we can, see where things can go right and wrong. Good place to start. I mean, it's weird that we haven't done that. It feels weird that it's kind of being made as like a sweeping political gesture, but like it just feels odd. Well,
there was no consultation in Bill 33.
No,
and it went through the House relatively quick, and we'll see what happens if there is going to be, if it's on the books for. And we know now that it's not on the books yet. There is no legislation because usually the parties know.
And you pointed out, Chris, another beef I have. Used to be in education, you had problems in the system. You got people together in the system that knew the system, knew where the pitfalls were, and collectively, synergized and came up with solutions. Under the current government, it seems to be what you do is you hire some so-called expert that has no education background at all.
Right.
You pay them $1,500 a day. Takes them about 3 to 4 months to find out where the washrooms are in in the regional system. And he writes a report, and that's gospel. And I don't think that cuts it.
The numbers are jarring if you put it that way. There is no financial gains to be made here. And we talked about it on the last show too, where the supervisor position who's now being put in place, I guess I don't want to get this wrong, but in place of the trustees, they're probably making on salary, let alone with operational costs, I would assume, and I could probably look this up, and I couldn't find the person's
name. It's about $350,000.
I thought it was over $300,000.
Plus $40,000 expenses.
Come on. What are we doing here? That's... And I don't mean to take shots at the Conservative Party itself, but I'm going to, because what has always been platformed as a party of fiscal responsibility and efficiency in budgeting, that feels like a really weird misstep, because you would think they would be well, money first here. Why can't we save some costs on this front when it doesn't seem to be like that at all?
Well, I'm strong conservative, been conservative all my life. I'm a former federal conservative, and I back this government. I back this government 100%, but this is not being handled very well. Not being handled. They're off on the wrong track here, and we're trying to point out the fallacies of one aspect, and hopefully they'll listen.
Mm. We talked about it on a show with Dr. David Tabachnik, who's coming on in a couple weeks. And he alluded that, and I'm going to go a little bit broader here, but we're staying within Ontario, that it feels kind of like Doug Ford is moving away from being more of a populist and going towards almost more an elitism in terms of it's less about being a person of the people and moving towards more of a control kind of system. Which, if you haven't seen the episode, go back and listen to it and watch it. It's great. He's way more eloquent about the subject than I ever could, obviously. But it feels like as we kind of explore this topic and we look at, there being, and let's be honest, the public English Public Board is the biggest board by far. You're removing so many different levels, or flirting with the idea of removing so many different elected officials and elected people and trustees, that you're really getting rid of not just a couple voices in Near North, which, again, not to make light of a smaller number, but so many different other potential representatives that you're moving away from the people and moving towards back to control. I feel like that comparison is apt.
That's exactly the truth. And, I said in one of my former interviews, when you get a third strong majority government, there's a tendency to be a little autocratic. There's a tendency not to go to the people and say, what do we need? Or let's get a group of people and collaborate, synergize, and figure out what we need. There's a tendency to say, this is what you need, and this is how we're going to do it. And we don't care what you feel about it. We're going to do it this way. So my point is that, power, absolute power leads to autocratic decisions.
Yeah, now in the North Bay case, going back 2 terms when we worked together, and we had a supervisor. We had 2 supervisors because we inherited the 3 schools to 2, and
That's
then
right.
it should have, and they didn't listen to staff, should have went from 3 schools to 1, and we would have a brand new school somewhere in North Bay today. But that didn't happen, and that went sideways. The ombudsman got involved, et cetera, et cetera. So at that time, when we came on, we had to work. So further to your point, Jay, yeah, if we need a consultant to help us out, and we cleaned up the mess, so to speak, because there was a lot of governance, no transparency, et cetera, et cetera. So those things could happen in a better working relationship.
In fact, they did a report on, and we were all interviewed, and as I say, I was only back on the board 2 months, and I was included in the interview. And they did a report for Minister Calandra, and I suggested at that point in the report exactly what Bill was talking about. The last time we had difficulty, we had, and it was a result of the 3-2 decision. We met. Jeff Botting was the director, and we met in Toronto, and we met with the deputy minister, and we convinced her, okay, put in a supervisor because we do need help, but let us work hand in hand with the supervisor because I think we've got a competent board. And we did that, and we worked our way out. And the 2018 to 2022 term was a fantastic term. We accomplished a lot, but it was simply that cooperation, that synergy. I suggested this time, but obviously there were other factors at play.
The thing that makes us unhappy is that we were working away at the directives.
Yeah.
And when I sit back after all these weeks have gone by, months now, I guess, a couple of months, and think about it, we were working away at them, including, going to meet in Parry Sound and have a strategy. And now, of course, the general contractor has been fired, and there was, in fact, a process to go through that. And we had started in the process to get the deficiencies in the school cleaned up or completed and then have the school open. But then the minister, who has taken a personal liking to the board and given it personal attention, because, of course, there is no supervisor yet. He is the supervisor.
There is still none. There isn't one.
He is the supervisor. He is he's taking. That's what he has said. He will remain supervisor until such time.
Yeah, I was chair for 13 days, and I was displaced as chair by the Minister of Education.
Yeah. Quite the run there, right? I mean, just to kind of fill in the gaps, because I feel like we were all pretty abreast on it. You came into, speaking to you, Jay, you came into the board again after a couple people resigned from the board, and they brought you back in. And then at the annual, I guess it's annual every year.
Yeah, the reorganization,
Yeah, for the vice chair and the chair, which you both, I believe, got vice chair and chair.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, some names I know, some faces I know. But I was like, I also know the timeline of which you kind of got the cards dealt to you. I was like, this feels hard. Not because of the directives, because I know, at least I think I know, the outlook of the person who's making that decision.
Well, we had some, in addition to that, Chris, we had some fine people join us to displace the trustees that really didn't want to learn how to be trustees. We had three resignations and 3 people joined the board. So we had a pretty good, we thought we could have a pretty good run.
Because I think Louise also mentioned the last time we had her on that, you did meet a lot of those directives, as you said, Bill, that I think... I think there was like a dozen or something. It felt like there was a lot, but you guys were moving quick. Obviously, the big one was the director's office was moved, and obviously, touching base with meeting with Parry Sound and the Parry Sound School, which was a whole different subject. You guys were clicking along, but it didn't feel like it was going to matter. I think the decision was already made.
We thought we were clicking along, and that it did matter, and I think we were well on our way. And as Jay said. He had direct contact with the minister's office, and I would say, Jay, that the message from the minister's office that we were on the right track.
From his staff, but the minister obviously had other ideas. And I do believe, in our contention here with Bill and I and this initiative is the trustees itself. Mm-hmm. With the board had a terrible, terrible term. And my own contention is the Parry Sound thing was very severe. That's going to be a challenge. That's going to be a challenge to get those kids in school by September, because there are other factors at play with the builder.
Yeah, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. Either one of you, did Paul or his team not come out and say they're not projected to be in the high school as it's completed, as it's expected to be completed by September 2026. They didn't say it was going to happen this year. Is that correct?
The most recent, the wanting to open in September 2026, and it's left
down.
at wanting to, given all the things that have to be done. I mean, I was with the minister came up in May of 2025, and there was a plan then, and things obviously went sideways, and a lot of things going on. That is a complex affair down there in Parry Sound for a whole bunch of different reasons, but now the minister will oversee that, and as the news said, the general contractor is fired, and so they'll have to be replaced, and of course there'll be all kinds of legal proceedings, one shape or another.
That's going to be a very difficult situation because the minister has fired the company that were doing the job, the construction company, and the construction company has deemed that inappropriate and countersuit to the minister. So that's going to be a bit of a legal battle, and let's hope it concludes very quickly, because September 26th comes very fast.
Yeah, and I'm always in favor of the educators and the students. They're the ones who are being impacted the most. Obviously, the families that go along with that. But I'm sure we're going to cover that in a different episode. I'd love to cover that more as we get there. Yeah. And you lads are always welcome back for that one too, if you want to. But I want to take you back a little bit further back in terms of having that connection, or like a call away, so to speak, from those at the ministry. Has there been any conversations, whether it's with our MPP or anyone at the Ministry of Ed, regarding where things are at with you guys in terms of being trustees, or with regards to this petition? Has there been any kind of conversations that are happening that we haven't seen yet that you would like to share with us, or things that you would want to see?
I can only speak from the Ontario Public School Board Association that we remain. We had paid up our fees in good stead, and it had been asked by OPSPA to pay them ahead of time for the deadline of September. So we had done that, and so we are still in good standing. As I said, I'm the voting delegate, and there are things to be voted upon at OPSPA until such time until the minister says one way or the other. And so from a legal standpoint, again, as I said at the very outset, that we still are elected officials. Obviously, we have no rights within the board. We have no email. We have no stipends. We don't have anything. But
as far as the MPPs are concerned, both our MPP and the MPP for Parry Sound Muskoka both supported the minister in placing a supervisor himself.
Interesting. Not that this is all related, but Graydon Smith and Vic Fidelli are both invited onto the show. They're welcome to come on and talk to us. We've extended invitations to them before in previous different stories, but just know that the door is open still if you want to come on and talk with me. I'm always happy to kind of hear the other side of it, but obviously I feel like that's always a bit more of a challenge because they're, like a lot of people, they're busy lads, busy people. But just know the invitation is still on the table, fellas. If you want to come in, come chat with us, please. I'd love to hear from you. But if we can, that's a good answer. I do want to maybe pivot towards what action this petition can have, because this is a powerful movement you kind of talked a bit about. You call it the coalition called Citizens Advocating for Democracy in Ontario.
Yeah.
Right? So as of today, I think I saw it. It's only been up for about almost 3 weeks or so. You have about 552 signatures, which is great. Good job. What is the action items regarding this petition? What, ripple or wave can this cause within our own province or outside of that to help continue to advocate for democracy in Ontario?
Yeah. I've been part of petitions before, but never started one.
Yeah.
So it's like it would be like a full-time job. I've got a full-time job at the Canadian Equality Centre. It's the data suggests that you have to ask a person about 7 times before they'll sign, plus or minus. And for me, we've had a lot of media stories because Jay's been on other podcasts, and every time we have a media link, that goes out. So the views and the sharing of the petition is just as important as the signatures. I'm just kind of one person trying to, encourage other people, and that will come about. But there are other petitions out there, and so again, I think it just points to the kind of the beginning of a groundswell that could occur depending on what the minister will do. And again, we're all waiting with bated breath to say this is what our next step is, and that'll be forthcoming in one shape, form, or another. So the petition and any media interviews that are done, and in our Ontario Public School Board Association media roundup every day, you'll see stories related to trustees, whether they're suspended boards or not, and so it remains a part of that critical piece of democracy at this public education level.
I think from my point of view, it provides a focus, Chris, a focus that people can express their concern. And as Bill points out, it takes a while for people to sign petitions. And in my view, democracy we all take for granted till it's gone.
Fair point.
And then we're sorry. And we don't want to be sorry, And that is why I wrote to the Premier on December 17th, because, and I've not only written to the Premier, I've written to all the cabinet ministers, just to make sure that they're fully informed of what's going on. Because having been in that position before, it's a busy world and not everybody knows what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
So I made them fully aware. I sent them a copy of the letter to the Premier and sent my points as to why I think it would be a big mistake for Ontario to terminate trustees.
Yeah, and it is a bargaining year, central bargaining year too. So there's other variables at play with regards to, because trustees and, of course, the Ontario Public School Board Association, along with their other cohort colleagues, they provide that representation for board. So it's a pretty important year coming up.
Yeah.
We're in 2026. So there again, we'll see just where where Paul Calendar will go with his next move.
There are other concerns too.
Yeah.
My point about other deficiencies in the school. There's a group called the Honor Schools Association that are really driving at violence in schools and local class size and underfunding. So there's quite a bit going on.
Yeah. And those are the issues that will already are emerging with the federations.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if you're looking at education in Ontario, there's so many different, as you mentioned, Bill, milestones or important dates that like this is like, if you're gonna have this conversation, like this is the year.
Yeah, this is it. No, I don't want to, we often overuse that perfect storm kind of analogy, but it's headed in that direction, indeed, because of the other variables. I mean, he has to act soon. Yeah. I mean, again, we're all slated to run again if you choose to run again on October 26th and declare, as I said earlier, in and around May or June. So that's not very far.
Yeah. I mean, the ball's clearly in his court. The shot clock's got zeros as far as I'm concerned. He should have had that, action done before, as he outlined himself.
He can only kick the can down the road so many times.
Yeah, or else he's going to run out of room to actually do anything, right? Because you have to have time to do anything, whether you fall on, removing the trustee system entirely or keeping the status quo and kicking it down later. You have to do something, and I feel like he has to announce it at some point, or at least something else, right?
This could be one of those game makers or game breakers for the government. I mean, we know that there's all kinds of emotional issues and how important health is and education and the like. But this is, again, when people, again, step back and say you're removing a democratic institution. We've seen this in the United States, is it now, and when things are imposed upon and taking away rights or rights are being threatened. And so this is akin to that.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point, Bill. And I don't think maybe kind of similar to how the general public probably doesn't fully understand the capacities of what a trustee does. Mm-hmm. I don't think they fully understand that this is like an actual right that they're being, forcibly taken like away from, right? Like that if you remove that, not that I would say in terms of like, municipal election season, the trustees, area of the ballot is like super, super exciting generally compared to, the other. But you're still losing a form of representation. And I just don't think people truly understand that.
It's a direct parallel to a councillor at City Hall.
Yeah.
If I have a problem with my house or with my street, I go to my councillor, if it persists. And it's the same thing with school boards.
Yeah.
If you have a problem in education, maybe with your child or whatever, and you're not getting adequate attention, you go to your trustee.
I'll actually go one step further, Bill, just to kind of throw back to you. I would say the trustee system as it currently stands in our area, I'll use New North as an example. I would actually say, comparing it to our local municipality, it's actually a little more innovative because it actually has, depending on how you feel with the opinion, reps for regions. We have kind of like what is already kind of like a ward system already implemented in the trustee system, which we don't currently have municipality-wise, which I think is interesting. But I'll give it back to you.
Yeah, no. Just akin or parallel to that is that most mayors in Ontario are reticent to use that mayor's power that was given to them, and so perhaps in times of natural disasters and things like that, it would become it would be a good thing. But they don't want to exercise that because it's it's power and control things. You're going beyond. In this case, we're removing or could be removing trustees as a democratic entity.
And the reason, Chris, why the trustees, the boards have that ward system is most trustee boards are regional. Yeah. So that's, you need that type of a system, whereas most cities are within their own bounds.
Mm-hmm. And I always, when I feel like it's appropriate, I always do try to mention that, we have a small listenership, I guess, in Parry Sound. And, we kind of are like an area which they kind of answer to at Barrie as well. But they're kind of stuck between the Muskokas and Northern Ontario. But with Near North, obviously we were associated. And, I've family in Parry Sound. My partner's family is from there. They had to read all about the high school stuff and, that the trustee there, recently came out and said like they lack a voice now, and that community kind of does because unlike, North Bay, we had multiple different trustees. They're without one now, and obviously he can still do what he has to do and still say what he has to say. But that area in particular, which we already kind of felt maybe like it was kind of, if you were to kind of make the argument, kind of lumped into a bigger area where they maybe had, a little more recognition before amalgamation. Now they have nothing, right? They went from being 4 to 1 and now 1 to 0, so to speak.
Well, in this case, in the Near North Board, Minister Calandra is the supervisor, and so in the other supervised boards is at the same time. And again, these student and family offices, you don't have that person to call up. You don't have it.
Yeah, like who do you even call? I mean, I guess he goes to the sounding board.
We're not calling Ghostbusters.
No, unfortunately, there's no demons to quell here.
It's going to be, as I said, a glorified complaint list.
Yeah,
with no clout whatsoever.
Yeah, it's just like a suggestions box, basically, with a little more vitriol.
Yeah, the problem is there's no authority. So how do you get trustees have authority through their chair, through the director? Yeah. They have authority.
Yeah.
This will just be a complaint box, as you say.
Yeah. I'm keen to see where this coalition, this petition goes, because I think it's, again, we talked about the perfect storm. This is a good time for it, not because of what happened already before, but what might be happening coming up. I'm keen to see the uptick on petitions like this and others regarding, how the public can kind of get involved and be active, because it feels like we talked about global issues. There's so many things happening, and we're connected and dialed into so many different worlds in so many different ways that I feel like sometimes we lose sight of what's in front of us. And I think there's a lot of things that could be done that I'm keen to see what you fellas and, your colleagues are up to regarding helping to educate and inform the public of what's at risk and what's at stake going forward, because there's a lot to talk about.
Well, for the petition, it was, I've led most of my life. You can rant and rave, do nothing, or do something. And at the end of the day, I have to tell myself that I tried to do something and convince anyone and everyone that you should be aware of this, and you should know about that part of the democracy if it is taken away from us. And so, the story goes on. It is a majority in Ontario, and the Liberal Party doesn't have a leader yet. The New Democratic Party is trying to push back. They push back every day, as both parties do. There's a lot of dragons to slay, or at least contribute to the debate. But we've seen, as Jay said, in this third term, there is that nature of being autocratic, and I think we're seeing that right now because, again, as was stated, there's no public consultation, and when it goes to the legislature, it's kiboshed.
Which is a sad state of affairs, and that's eroding democracy in itself.
Yeah, it's eroding is a good way of putting it. I think. We'll see if the political parties who are in opposition can kind of rally their forces, because I don't think when actually, maybe you guys can clarify with this. When is the next expected provincial election?
3 years.
That's a far way away. They have time to get their stuff together, but in the current moment, the trustees I feel like they're kind of left hanging in the wind here. But I think this outlines something you kind of mentioned earlier, Jay, and I'm going to throw it back to you here. That this subject isn't really party affiliated. This is a democratic issue, right? It's a concern that no matter what, color you vote for come in the fall, this affects us all. And it doesn't matter if the government was conservative, liberal, NDP, whatever have you. I would hope that the gusto and the initiative would be the same, because you come from a background of being conservative at the federal level, and now you're on this coalition that is essentially rallying against or at least pleading to provincial level conservatives with Doug and his team. And so it shouldn't matter about party lines. This is something that I think we should all look at and say, like, you disagree with the local trustees, or maybe not necessarily align with the political party at the provincial level. This is something that we should all have, whether it fails or succeeds. It's our right. We should have it. We should protect it. Is that fair?
That's fair. And when you go back, Bill Davis was a tremendous minister of education. He was a tremendous premier. And I'm not talking out of turn when I say that his actions formed the structure of an education in Ontario. He was responsible for the community education system, the community colleges. And he built a system that was what we all are proud of today. And to see that erode, or to see that be not representative, certainly shakes me the wrong way. And I don't like to see that.
Yeah. It's, we're going to see, like, I'm paying attention. I'm going to, not just because I've had this conversation, obviously, it wasn't predicated on my signature, but I'm going to sign it because I think what the good is, it serves us all, no matter, again, where you come from, who you elect. If you vote at all, you should have that right, that privilege. Well, it's not privilege. It should be a right to vote for voice in the community. So, fellas, before we get out of here, is there anything you want to tell, our listeners, our audience, where they could find the coalition, the petition, where they can read the letter, or things coming up for you two going forward? Yeah,
the best place is, again, Google Save Trustees as Elected Officials in Ontario. Maybe you'll post the link or something like that.
We can.
And, again, the tagline is democracy is under attack. And we don't want to be trumped in Ontario. And I think, in essence, we've kind of talked about that. And Jay mentioned, the autocratic nature, perhaps, of parties when they get into their third term and things. And people just need to become aware that this could very well happen. And then what?
And I think, too, Chris, that, as I mentioned before, democracy is something people take for granted until it's gone.
Yeah.
And then it's too late. And my advice to people out there, to parents particularly, if you want to continue to have a say in your system, and I think they do. I think it's 2-1 myself, and I'm standing by those numbers. If they want to continue to have a say in education at all, vote this thing down, sign the petition, lobby against it, whatever. And it's important that people express their opinions.
Perfect. Well said. I'll note that you can always, as I continue to promote and invite, you can always write to your MPPs as well, see what they got to say, see if they answer your emails. But fellas, Jay, Bill, thanks for coming in today. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you back out there.
Good. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you so much for listening or watching the Echo Essentials podcast. My name, as always, is Chris Pekarski. Let us know what you thought about the episode. If you have any thoughts on the trustee system, the Ministry of Education, the influence of democracy here in Ontario, let us know. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe on all platforms, wherever you find your podcast. If you also can, check out the Echo Essentials newsletter, where we give you beats and news and all things podcasts and articles related about North Bay right to you in your inbox. Thanks so much for listening.